Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I will be showing you the WeTech M9 series pistols. Specifically, I will be showing you the differences between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 models, as well as the version 1 and version 2 models of the Burton Samurai Edge. The Samurai Edge pistols today from the popular Resident Evil series, I will be calling Biohazard, as that is the description you will find them under when looking at websites such as Red Wolf or eBike. So these will be the Biohazard pistols, but most of this information is relevant to standard military style M9 pistols as well. I will be going over the differences that you will find between them. I will also be covering grips, what types of grips work, what types of grips do not work. I will be covering the differences in parts as well as what makes a Gen 1 and what makes a Gen 2. Parts compatibility as well as the differences between the models. Alright, let's just get right into it. First up, let's cover what a Gen 1 WE pistol is. This is the stripped down Burton model, the Samurai Edge or Biohazard models, but a lot of this information pertains to the standard military models, M9s as well. This information does not go for the M93Rs, as the grips, trigger mechanisms, safeties, hand controls are all very different. So let's just stick straight to it. These are the M9 or 90. This one is specifically a 92FS. The Gen 1 models are mostly semi-automatic only. They did have some full auto versions, but the issue with the full auto versions was that the rear end here was not reinforced. This is a slightly newer model. I do not have an original model to show you the differences, unfortunately. But this backplate has been reinforced as well as the slide is thicker. Full auto models would have, as this is a form of pot metal. The rear of the slide would blow out. One of the ways you can tell that this is a Gen 1 semi-auto is how these trails are solid. Gen 1s do not feature a functional decocker. For the next portion of this, showing what the Gen 2 model is, I will be using a original Gen 1 model for point of reference. The Gen 2 models are lighter, they are better built, they do not make nearly as much noise. the paint is almost like a lacquer. It's like an enamel. Semi-gloss, still a bit shiny compared to the Gen 1 models. Gen 1 models, most of them are a matte black finish, unless of course it's not black. These do feature a functional decocker. That is how you can tell that this is a Gen 2. Something to keep in mind when using the safety on a Gen 2 is trying to engage the safety while the hammer is disengaged. Does not always work. You can break them in, but in the process of breaking them in, you can also actually break them. Gen 2 models are also fully automatic and semi-automatic via a selector switch. This on the real firearm would just be a safety. However, when depressed all the way up, it is in semi-auto mode. And if you were to click it to the middle, that is full auto, which of course you have full control over it. Therefore, you can fire it in burst if you wish. But if you hold the trigger down, it will go until it runs out of gas. This is a Gen 2 frame. And as you can see, there is a big difference here as to how the design of the slide is, or how the design of the slide connects to the frame. Also, the safety mechanism is built differently. There's a pressure release here that engages it, this disengages it, and this also works with the selector switch as to how the full auto works, as well as this piece right here. Those depress. Gen 2 model versus ATV2 models if you look at the e-bike website. The differences between the two that I have seen are simply the color of the parts being built. For example, you may find that the nozzle is black or the nozzle is blue. The adjustable wheel is either black or it is blue. This is the underside of a Gen 2 slide. They do have a threaded barrel as well if you remove the orange tip. Both the Gen 2 and the ATV2 models that I bought came with one of these. A popular question as to, do I have a Gen 1 model or do I have a Gen 2 model? The easy answer to that, you do not have to disassemble your airsoft gun. One of the 3 ways that you can check. The safety will have 1 screw. See if I can get it to focus. The safety will have 1 screw. That is a 1.5 millimeter Allen key screw. While the Gen 2 models have 2. Really hoping this will focus. The Gen 2 model has 2, and those are 1.3 millimeter. The reason that I'm mentioning this is because if you ever wish to disassemble this portion of the slide, you must remove the safety first. And in order to do so, you will need those out. I will be making a separate video on how to fully disassemble a Gen 2 slide. Another way to tell is if you have an extended slide release. Notice how it has a tail. The extended slide release, I do not know for certain if this is just a feature on the Samurai Edge Biohazard models. I do know lore-wise, these guns, some of them, did have an extended slide release based on the model. However, WeTech did not give all models the extended slide release. The Gen 2s are not extended. Now, say that you did want to take them apart, just to be sure. The Gen 2 models have an adjustable wheel. They are based on the Tokyo Marui design that was released with their M9A1 models. That is the adjustable hop-up. The Gen 2 model inner barrel, which is this piece here that can be removed, and the outer barrel is not compatible with Gen 1 models. You cannot put a Gen 1 and Gen 2 frame or slide together from the opposite gen. Gen 2 slide will not fit on a Gen 1, and a Gen 1 slide will not fit on a Gen 2 frame. The difference also lies in the guide rods. This guide rod in my left hand, notice how it comes down. That is a Gen 1 model. This guide rod, where it is flush, that is a Gen 2 model. They're the same length, same diameter. The difference is how it hooks onto this portion right here. This is a Gen 1, this is a Gen 2, and the distance is too great. However, swapping out this does not fix the problem. This is a Generation 1 nozzle for the M9 pistols built by WE. This is a Generation 2. There are some key differences. The diameter of the input for the nozzle is a different size. The Gen 2 is bigger. The position at which they are held is also lower versus higher. And one of the biggest key differences is how they are held into the slide. Notice how the Gen 1 model has 2, and the Gen 2 model only has 1. That is in relation to the springs that force the nozzle back into position after being fired. The design also follows down the rails of the nozzle, of which and how it slides in position in the slide. To demonstrate, I have a Generation 2 assembly. If you take a Gen 1 nozzle and put it in here, and as you can see, it does not line up, nor does it fit over the plunger. You can force it, but I would not recommend it, and it won't work in your slide anyways. This is a Generation 2 nozzle. You want this portion to be facing the underside of the slide, so you want to flip them up, and it goes right over the plunger. This rail right here, there's a space, that is where a spring will be held. And it uses that nub to hold into place. So once you remove this assembly from the bottom of your slide, that spring is going to want to come out. You're going to want to keep an eye on that. There will also be a piece of metal that I will be showing in a separate video that goes between these two arms. And that is in relation to that. I do not know the technical terms, so I apologize. As you can see how that works, that is where it would be fired, and this is where it would be reset. Something to keep in mind. You'll notice there is a round hollowed out area here. That is where the safety on the Gen 2 models goes all the way through. So in order to remove this housing, to replace the nozzle, if you broke your nozzle or the spring, is by removing the safety. It is crescent moon shaped. However, in order to remove the safety, it needs to slide out of the slide with the left side or the non-removable side towards you. You will be moving it away from the side where you remove the screws. But in order to do that without damaging your nozzle any more than it may already be, is you have to move the nozzle forward out of position so that the safety has all of the range that it needs to move out. And you can do so by pulling it forward so that you can see the nozzle. I will be doing a full video on how to do this later, to show you in relation how it would look inside of the slide. And that is the full extent to its travel. Next up, I will be describing the differences in the models. First up, you have the standard model Biohazard. These include a standard M9 style magazine with a base plate. These are green gas. The Gen 2 models are in this gloss style finish. They do feature fully automatic and semi-automatic modes. This model has been modified. I have the inox style trigger and blue medallions that were ordered for me. This will be based on the Chris Redfield model. I will need to add some bluing to the slide. Next up, we have the Burton models. This model of Samurai Edge, the Burton V.1, was released with the GameCube release of Resident Evil in 2001. I do believe the Gen 1 model is the most accurate replica you will find, as it has the matte black finish, as the finish in the game is not gloss. In the game, his model was a .40 Smith & Wesson caliber. Samurai Edge models do feature an adjustable rear sight. On the WE-M9s, these are not adjustable. However, they do become loose. In order to tighten them, you must disassemble the rear of the slide. At the bottom of the sight, there will be 2 screws. Of the ones I have seen, they've both been Phillips style screws. This is a replacement sight that I ordered from evike.com, and even though the picture showed that it did not have painted dots, it did indeed have painted dots. The rail assembly on these is held in by 2 Phillips screws. They are located in the bottom of the frame. In order to remove the muzzle, you need an Allen key. The Allen key is included with the pistol, unless of course you got it secondhand. Then I will tell you the size of the Allen key edited into the video here. You will notice that there are 2 Allen key screws. One is fake. This slides forward. It does have a front sight on it. Something to keep in mind, because the Burton models do not have a front sight on the slide. From here, you will remove your slide as normal, pull it back slightly to press the button back here. Move this down. Make sure you don't have a magazine in it. And the slide will come forward. The hop up on the Gen 1 models I did not describe earlier are on the upper side of this assembly. You must remove this assembly, and it is a very small screw. These are the Phillips screws in question for removing the lower rail. These do become loose over time, so I recommend some blue or the temporary style Loctite. The model also features silver screws that are flathead style. The reason the screws are black on this one is because I did not have a spare set of silver screws when I made this. I made this out of a Gen 2 model. They do sell Gen 2 Burton version 1s now. At the time, they did not. Next up, you have the Burton version 2. The Burton version 2 features Hogue style grips. These are polymer, and they are 2-piece. They split down the middle. All Burton version 2s are Gen 2s. The version 1 and version 2 models both use the same magazine and the same style magazine. These are Burton magazines. They go for about $37 a piece on evike.com. They are green gas. They do hold more gas, and the slide release and trigger bar are black, while the version 2 are dark gray, as well as the trigger. The rail on the bottom is unique. I believe one is Weaver and one is Picatinny. They're both 20 millimeter. They are interchangeable. The rear sight, however, is not the same. The version 2 has an elevated rear sight versus the version 1, which has the standard wing style sight. That also means that while the muzzles are completely interchangeable, the height difference at which they sit is not the same. Therefore, your aim down sights, your iron sights, will be different. This is the proper position at which the two of them would line up. The reason this one is longer is it goes around the slide. As you will notice. This also means that some of these models that have an orange tip on the end of the barrel will not fully seat, and therefore it will keep the gun out of battery and it will not fire. The model that I bought had orange tape around it and the tape was removed. As you can see, the elevation differences at which the sight would normally be. Therefore, having a higher rear sight also helps with target acquisition. If you were to put this on this model, out of complete curiosity, you'll see what I mean about the orange tip. The orange tip will not allow it. Therefore, if you do not have an orange tip, you could, but it will throw your iron sights off. Replacement muzzles. I have not seen or found any replacement muzzle brakes for the version 2. However, I have found version 1. The V.1 specifically shows that it does not have a front sight. The one I purchased, however, came with a front sight. This was actually a problem for me, as I had wished to buy one of these without the front sight in it. As for the finish, it is not the same. It is not as glossy as the Gen 2, but it is also not matte like the Gen 1. It is possibly a matte paint with a semi-gloss finish, therefore giving it this weird in-between. So if you do buy one of these, in order to use it, you need that lower rail for the Allen key. As for customization, this is a Gen 1 model, this is a Gen 2 model. Parts between the two are not entirely interchangeable, however, some parts are. This acts as a plunger. On the standard models, such as the M9A1, you may find a lanyard loop. This acts as a plunger, there's a spring on it, comes up, and it helps reset the hammer. This plunger, or lanyard loop in this case, is from a Gen 2 model, specifically this M9A1 frame. In order to use the Samurai Edge style grips, you cannot have a lanyard loop. Therefore, some use a Dremel to Dremel this off. However, since this was a Samurai Edge frame, it had a flat plunger. Therefore, I was able to interchange the two so that I could use the Samurai Edge style grips on the M9A1 frame and then use this on the Samurai Edge frame. This has been modified to represent the Brad Vickers Samurai Edge, which has not been shown really much at all. These grips are real steel grips. Real steel as in these are grips that you would use on a real Beretta. They do not feature a magwell, therefore I can use this grip. The standard Samurai Edge grips, they are dark brown, light brown, or even a cardboard style brown, depending on how lucky you are. The Gen 2 models tend to have the darker brown, which are very nice. However, some of the Gen 1s and some Gen 2s also have the cardboard style grips. One way of describing them is this. It's a lighter brown. And the paper style cardboard grips I do not have, but you can see that there is indeed a color difference. The standard model grips will be a black medallion with gold. This is a modified one to make it blue. These are not sold by WeTech. This portion is, but the medallion is not. The medallion is unique. WeTech does have, through KYA Airsoft, a more standard style. This is very grippy. And this is the portion that covers where the lanyard loop would be. Therefore, you cannot use this with the lanyard loop unless you cut this off or remove your lanyard loop for a standard style plunger from a Samurai Edge model. Again, these are sold by WeTech. I like these because these kind of would look like those original grips from the Resident Evil 1 Collector's Edition or Director's Cut on the PlayStation 1, where it had the special unique inox style M9. However, these also feature the bottom. And these are slim. You will notice these are thicker. These are slim. Depending on what style that you like, these may feel better in your hand if you have a smaller hand. And then KJW sells a rubberized version. However, these do not work without modifications. You'll notice this is designed in a way so that it sits in the frame. WE does not have that. This does not fit in a WE frame without modification. A Dremel or some heavy-duty sandpaper may be able to ground this down a bit, and these will work if you really want rubberized grips that are standard style. These are flat, and they do not feature a magwell. KJW does, however, sell these style. They are two-piece, they are plastic and polymer. These are the grips that I was using on my Brad Vickers model originally. And then I got the Hogue style rubber grips, which these are not that, but they are on the other pistol as I showed. These use pegs to hold them in place, and they do not feature a magwell. They are short style. As for customization for the magazines, WE does sell CO2 magazines. There's a release down here. You pull this tab up, releases the plate. Plate slides forward. You use an Allen to remove this, and then the CO2 cartridge goes in. However, we could not get the CO2 cartridge back out, therefore we only ever used this twice. This is a standard inox magazine. I bought a couple of these, and I bought a couple of these, and I interchanged the bottoms, therefore making this unique magazine. This magazine, the purpose, is based on the Guard 1 Renetti that I use for this. However, the Guard 1 Renetti also has an extended magazine, which has a longer extension. Therefore, this is the second inox magazine, and this is a Tokyo Marui 9-ball extension. This was an absolute pain in the butt to put together, as the pins were not the same size, or the pinholes were the same size between the Tokyo Marui bottom and the WeTech upper. Therefore, with a pair of vice grips, I ended up damaging the magazine a little bit, but I did manage to get it together, and it does hold gas. This is a standard base plate from a standard magazine, which also means you could, in theory, stack these on top of one another, or put a Barry Burton extension on the bottom, which does have its own plate internally, is held in by a screw. And I will be showing how to disassemble these at some point in a future video so that you can know how to maintain your magazines, because these will leak over time. This broke off of the Tokyo Marui 9-ball bottom. This is a standard black model. This is the standard black bottom with the inox top. And this is what happens if you sand off the black paint off the bottom. They are aluminum. If you put a semi-gloss paint on it like I did, but they are not the same. These are painted silver and then, gloss coated over, and this is how you get them from WeTech, and you can really tell they're definitely not the same shade. You can definitely see the differences in the metal, how they're not shiny at all. Scratch this down a little bit more, and it's like a dull flat gray. It's very interesting how these are set up, because when I took these mags apart, specifically this group of mags here, these are definitely some older mags for sure. They still have that gas chamber tube inside, and all of my mags do not. However, I did notice that they do still seem to have the Gen 2 nozzle, so I'm not exactly sure at what point the mag is newer. It's like this is like an in-between. I had bought a mag back not too long ago when I bought that Gen 1 versus Gen 2 Samurai Edge. Some of them say WeTech on the bottom, and some of them say M92F military model. These are WeTech, and the one base plate I did steal a while back when I was first building these mags was this custom mag. I wanted to put the military 92F on it, but